I think previously folks were much more inclined to look at where lines had already been written down for them, and I think we still hear that conversation now.
Lines and routes are being discovered, and to be thinking up our own and doing these is really satisfying.
A huge appeal on going on adventures like this is that I get to have intimate experiences with nature.
Actually, like the best way to say it is that to me what has always been important is that every day I want to be living.
Was the trip, you know.
The whole darn thing.
The whole darn thing.
So, Kim and Bjorn sea kayaked on their own journey. Ben and I flew into Anchorage, took the train down to Seward, met up with everybody, kind of repacked our gear, got bikes and Packrafts all situated, made sure everything was in order to go, and then we took to the woods. So took Resurrection Trail up to Cooper Landing, got on Kenai from there. I'm gonna get things so backwards. But then traveled the whole Kenai River. And then did some beach riding all the way down back to Homer.
Should we bring this many? How many should we bring? Emergencies. Is it nice to have more than one a day?
Sure.
Yeah.
We paddled into a pod of humpbacks. They were moving around in the water pretty fast, chasing after these little fish, these sand lances. And so I was filming, and then I heard Kim scream, and I looked behind, and one was right underneath her, and as it was passing, it kind of flipped her with its pectoral fin.
Holy shit.
We sea kayaked from Homer to Seward through the Kenai Fjords, which is a really rugged, remote coastline exposed to the Gulf of Alaska. It's a pretty advanced sea kayaking trip.
The most exciting thing for me about it is that sense of exploration and discovery. You know, to go around headlands and capes that I've never seen before, and not knowing what the rock formations will look like, or you know, what kind of landscape it's going to be, or what kind of animals you're going to find, plants, that kind of things.
It's just this amazing, remote, rugged coastline with a very rich animal habitat. You know, sea, land, air. The wildlife between Seward and Homer is just incredibly rich. It's the Kenai Fjords National Park for most of the way, so it's a lot of protected land. And so Kim had been really pushing for a while that we do that trip. So when she said, let's do a sea kayak trip, I said, yeah, okay, well, let's tack on a fat bike and Packraft element to it too. And so that ended up being this kind of circumnavigation of the, you know, not quite of the entire Kenai Peninsula, but of the Kenai Mountains, I guess.
We've seen a whole handful of marine mammals that we would expect to see: sea lions, seals, sea otters, humpback whale, and even orcas a couple of times. And then land animals, we've seen mountain goats, black bear, river otters, and even a wolf, which was really cool.
Part of what has always attracted me to the different pursuits that I've done is that the pursuit itself is rewarding in a kind of a playful way. You know, for example, like on our sea kayaking trip, it's not necessary for us to play in the rock gardens when there's swell or to stop and surf for a little while if our goal is to only just get from point A to point B. And yet we always try to kind of have enough time in the day and enough flexibility in our schedule to take advantage of those opportunities when they come up. Our friend Daniel came from Homer to Seward with his fat bike and Packraft, and we had left our fat bikes and Packrafts in Seward. And Ben and Amy flew to Anchorage, took the train down to Seward, and we all met up there. Dang, that's a sexy looking bike.
Is it easy for us to jump out and get to the store later? There seems to be this kind of common idea, which I think most people would probably identify with, that if you're in the woods, it's this sort of sanctuary, calming, quiet, reflective place, which it is. But having these tools like the Packraft and the fat bike, it allows you to get to those places, to have those experiences. But unlike walking, where you're just carrying your stuff and you could sing and like skip and like you can come up with some stuff, but if you're on the fat bike, you can like bring this level of, it's just kind of like being a kid, which I think is a huge part of exploring, you know, and like all this adult seriousness isn't necessarily the only piece of being spiritual or connected to the land. Like being playful is also a big part of it.
Kind of a neat thing about being on these trips is that you're filling a niche, sort of, within the natural environment. Traveling by human power through these natural corridors, you really get to feel intimate with the landscape. So you have these parameters that we can exist within the wilderness. It really feels neat to feel like you're sort of tapping into this natural rhythm and that it feels like there's a place for us out there.
You got to really be honest about what your skills are and where you're lacking, and be willing to learn and be humble coming to it. But there's totally a level of anxiety learning a new skill, and I think that's an important thing to not let conquer you, to know this is a new skill and all new skills are uncomfortable and they're going to be making you feel a little tense. But if you push through them, then you have this whole new series of equipment that you can turn and say, hey, I can navigate this river. I can connect these points in a different way because I've taken the time to learn this.
Come in right to this eddy line and then lean into it. Yep, and then paddle yourself into the eddy, yep.
I feel like all of these sports, I guess you'd call them, these pursuits, you can really take them at a variety of different levels. Like if you're a beginner, there's something there for you. If you are an intermediate, there is something there. And if you're really advanced, you can push it to that next level and go extreme if you want to. So I think that these are all like great pursuits for anybody who wants to have an experience with adventure and with their natural environment.
You can take a myriad of lines to get to where you're going. You could choose the most direct line, or you could choose a really, screwy line that takes you off, left field, and it's bumpy and rocky, and you drive through a creek, and whatever. There's always different ways that you can approach the terrain that you're riding on, and that's that's the playful side of it. For me, is I like trying to keep that, to make it be fun and interesting, moment to moment, to the best of my ability.
It's all mud, like all through here. Like those aren't rocks, it's just mud pits.
Drop in right there.
No, I'm not.
You can do it. You can do it.
Mud.
You can do it. Come on, you can do it. Yeah, Amy.
Fat bike for me, you can't help but just get on and kind of laugh or grin a little bit. And with this trip, I definitely felt that every time we were on a beach and it transitioned into a more rocky landscape, because you're finding rocks that look like ramps naturally, and so you can't help but just go off of it and challenge yourself, and you kind of feel all your camping gear shake as you hit that descent. But then you're also picking your own line.
Things that go on in the world that kind of bring you down, and you go out into the into a wild landscape, and you get to be reconnected with things that really matter. It's seeing nature on its own terms.
What we've lost is our confidence and our sense of how adaptable we really are, because everything that happens in the world is basically fed to us or given to us, or someone is doing it for us. We don't know where it comes from. There's all these miniature divorces everywhere. But I think that inherently people are not divorced from this sense of allowance, because we've had to live picking our berries and starting our fires and hunting our food way longer than we have been turning a knob and buying it in the store. So I like to believe, and I do believe, that that is more a part of who we are. So the key then, I think, is encouraging people to get out there, because what I've seen is that when they do, they're immediately, it might take a day or two, right, for the people who are really not confident or feel intimidated by it, but it's there. And then when people experience that, it's such a sense of accomplishment.
I've rambled around this town, but I always see a friend I know. When I go rambling round, when I go rambling round, if the wind comes from the north, where the rain might turn to snow, but I'm out to do